Welcome back into Overtime here on ESPN 99.1. Make sure and check out the podcast every single day. We throw it up after the show. iTunes, Spotify. Check out the links online at ESPN991.com. Let's head right to the ESPN 99.1 hotline. Joining us next, national radio host at SportsMap Radio, Jake Asman. Jake, welcome back in, bud. How you doing today?
JT, I'm doing great, my man. Thanks for having me, as always.
Hey, it's a pleasure, and we've gone to you quite often since this stuff has happened with Deshaun Watson, and we've talked about the different parallels between other incidents. We've talked about what it means to the city of Houston. Residing down there, you have the pulse, and obviously you're bringing in a lot of national voices to decide sort of what they think as well. I think this thing has taken so many different avenues since it came into our world back in March. Now we have training camp starting, Watson reporting. Has anything changed in regards to the trade part of this? We'll get to the other stuff in a second, but from a football perspective, from Deshaun Watson's perspective and the Texans' perspective, has anything changed since March?
Honestly, the only thing that has changed, obviously, there's been more and more lawsuits that have emerged. But it's always felt like for a long time that Deshaun Watson was never going to play for the Texans again. It just was going to take a while for maybe the Texans to get to that point to realize that's the case. But it seems like we've been there now. So I know the news today has been, the Texans are listening on offers. I can tell you firsthand, JT, that they've been listening to teams' offers for weeks already, if not months. So this is a new report, so to speak, but this has been going on behind the scenes for a while already. And the thing is, I would love to know the NFL team that's trading 3 first-round picks to the Texans for a quarterback that has 22 pending lawsuits with allegations of sexual assault. To me, a trade for Deshaun Watson can't happen unless the team trading for him knows if a significant league suspension is coming first. Not to mention, there is still an open investigation in Houston with the Houston Police Department as to whether or not criminal charges could still come against Deshaun Watson. I have heard that they're not expected to charge Watson with any crimes, but that being said, an NFL team would like to know this for sure before they invest premium draft capital and taking on a quarterback that's dealing with this many pending lawsuits. So, even though it's a big story today, all the Texans are listening in on offers for Deshaun, the reality is if Nick Caserio, the Texans GM, holds firm that he will not get ripped off here, he will not trade Watson for 25 cents on the dollar, I don't see a scenario where Watson gets traded anytime soon until there's some sort of clarity with everything going on in the legal situation.
You talk about the verbiage, too, that's used. And if you look at ESPN.com, the headline reads, Texans now willing to trade cornerback Deshaun Watson. But, you talked about all the other things that are there. Unless, like you said, there's knowledge that isn't public, it's an untouchable situation until the legal process plays itself out from another team's perspective. But could the Texans go, listen, Deshaun, we can't trade for you. You're so damn toxic. But do you want to stay in the league? Go out there and play any way that the Texans would put him on the field.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, ultimately, if Deshaun wants to play, I just don't see the Texans letting him play. Like, he just doesn't fit what they're trying to do now from a rebuild standpoint. And, Deshaun showing up to camp the other day just so he doesn't get fined, that's more of a business decision than anything else. I fully expect the Texans and Deshaun basically to have, an agreement where, he kind of just goes away. It doesn't bother the team, so to speak. I mean, he doesn't want to be there. The Texans obviously don't want him probably around their team as a huge distraction. So I don't see the scenario where he's playing for the Texans. I think he's either playing for a different team or not playing at all. So him showing up to camp is just basically to avoid being fined $50K a day, because with all the lawsuits the guy's facing, I can tell you firsthand, Rusty Hardin is not cheap. He is not a cheap attorney, so you might as well show up to camp and get paid than, hold out, get fined, and have all those legal fees you're paying as well.
National radio host Jake Asman with us here on the ESPN 99.1 hotline. And I think maybe the Green Bay Packers may be the happiest that these reports are coming out right now. They don't have to answer as many questions nationally about the Aaron Rodgers situation, at least on Monday with the Watson news this morning. What's your gut feeling on how that Aaron Rodgers situation is going to play itself out in Green Bay?
I still think, JT, ultimately, he's going to go back to Green Bay at some point here. I've long said that, we could be looking at a last stand situation with the Packers in Green Bay where they agree, after this year they trade him or they rework his contract where he can opt out or it voids after a certain date if they don't move him by, this time to give a concrete deadline on, when something would have to happen. But ultimately, we're too late in the process here for him to get traded. I don't see the Packers dealing him. And I think when you had both Rodgers and Devontae Adams, plus Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, Instagram stories the other day. That to me was like a signal of like, all right, last dance. They're going to go back to Green Bay one more year. Adams is a free agent as well, and then they'll go their separate ways and go somewhere else. I don't think he's getting traded. I think when push comes to the shove, his best chance to win this year is still with the team that's gone 13-3 the last 2 years and hosted the NFC Championship game at Lambeau the previous season. So ultimately, I think Aaron Rodgers plays week 1 for Green Bay. I've said that all along. And, it might be awkward. It might be ugly at times this summer. But ultimately, he's going to be there, and he's going to be their quarterback. And then, who knows what happens after the season. But at least for 2021, I fully expect Rodgers to be back and being the Packers quarterback.
Jake Asman with us here on the ESPN 99.1 Hotline. Jake, I want to transition to the other kind of football, that's college football, becoming more like pros on a lot of levels. One of them is sort of the ability to make your own decisions without really, consulting with the NCAA. It felt like 25, 30 years ago, if you ever wanted to leave a conference, you better have the blessing of the NCAA. You may not absolutely need their signature, but you need the blessing. Right now, that's not the case. And the Texas-Oklahoma situation is fascinating to me. About a decade ago, I really changed how I felt about college sports. I was working at SiriusXM, College Sports Nation, and I just became engulfed with all these rivalries and recruiting battles and this animosity within a state. Grew up in South Dakota. There's animosity between USD and South Dakota State. But it ain't like what you're dealing with in Mississippi or Texas. And now you're seeing it on the national level with this, we don't want to be a part of your conference. We're going to go to the juggernaut that is the SEC. What is your response to the way Texas A&M has reacted to Texas and Oklahoma saying, listen, we want to be in the same conference with you again, when Texas A&M was the team that said, we want the branding power of being a standalone in the state of Texas in the SEC?
It's just fascinating what the Big 12 will look like if you don't have Texas and OU, right? I mean, you're talking about the two powerhouse teams in the conference leaving. Can the conference survive without them? And it's fascinating to me, JT, that Texas and OU even want to go to the SEC. I mean, they make a ton of money now. They have an easier path to the college football playoff, staying in the Big 12 and avoiding the SEC and having to go through Bama and LSU and Georgia and all that. But you just wonder about the state of college football if Texas and OU lead that conference. I mean, the SEC is like, it's a super conference with those two schools that are added to the mix there. So, just following the situation from afar, it's been fascinating to watch. And you wonder now what the future is of the Big 12 if those two schools do indeed leave. Now, they have said that, they're going to try and honor the contract, which is going to expire in 2025 with the Big 12. But we know how this kind of works. You put it out there, and I would fully expect some sort of resolution to happen well before that deal ends. So this is now going to be the story in college sports going forward. Yeah, there's going to be, a number that I'm sure that's presented that you can buy out of this. Texas and Oklahoma saying they will not renew their media rights after 2025, as Jake was alluding to there, and their membership. The thing, too, and you brought up the Super Conference, and I wonder because you can go the one direction like you did, and that's the initial thought process I did was like, dude, like the Big 12 is not that good. Bottom half, you can get through some games, rest people. There's going to be 12 teams now in the playoff over the next couple of years. We'll get to that point. You can get 2 teams from the Big 12 at that point in a college football playoff. You won't be excluded like maybe you would in a 4-team playoff. But at the same token, I wonder if they're looking at it like this, Jake. You know how it is in Texas. Like the best players go to the best programs. And maybe sometimes the best players that are the big uglies and those that maybe the Big 12 doesn't have in those marquee games where they can't win a national championship are the ones that they think they can now get if they have the SEC attached to their name. A&M has gotten so much bigger and stronger after going to the SEC, and I feel like maybe Texas looks at it and goes, some of these dudes that are battling in the trenches that we're losing to the SEC, including in our state to Texas A&M, we get those and we get all the extra money. I don't know if that's what they were thinking in those rooms, but there has to be another angle because you're right. The path would be easier in the Big 12 from a winning and losing standpoint. I think you're right. I think that's a big reason why Texas A&M is like probably the only SEC school that doesn't want Texas and OU
right.
to enter the conference because they have that huge recruiting advantage now by being able to recruit Texas, but then also saying, well, SEC, and look what we're doing, right? So I think that's a great point by you, and I think you nailed it. I think it's a big reason why Texas and OU probably feel like attaching the SEC to their brand on top of what they already bring from a recruiting standpoint, being able to heavily recruit the South, heavily recruit Texas and Oklahoma. I think that's huge for probably what they feel is their chance of winning a national title down the line.
And I know you're a Jets fan. I know Jets fans are super passionate. I know you're a New York guy, Yankees fan, super passionate. But isn't it wild how crazy and passionate college football fans are, even comparable to the most diehard NFL fans?
No doubt. College fans are, it's a different breed.
Dude, it's so crazy, man. Like, you grew up in a big city, you know? And so college football wasn't as big in Long Island and in New York as maybe, if you get out there and go south and start heading down the coastline. For me, like I said, football was big. Nebraska football's, 4 hours south of us. But even I didn't realize as a kid how crazy these people were when it comes to the passion all year long for college football.
And, especially the SEC, right? Their slogan is "it just reads more," right? So it's a different animal, man. And, seeing packed stadiums again this fall and not having to worry as much about, COVID canceling games, hopefully, it's going to be a welcome sight because, as much fun as college football is every year, there's no doubt last year just didn't feel right with all the game cancellations and not having, non-conference marquee matchups going into conference play. So it's going to be a great year. And obviously, if you're a sports fan, Saturdays and Sundays in the fall, it's the best time of year.
Jake Asman with us, SportsMap Radio. Finally, man, let's get to baseball. Are you sticking a fork in your Yankees right now?
I'm pretty much sticking a fork in any chance they have of, winning the division. The fact that they could have taken, essentially 3 out of 4 from the Red Sox.
Did you have fun this weekend watching that series? Did you enjoy that? That was fun,
I
huh?
Did not. Oh man, it was as much fun as getting my wisdom teeth out about a week ago, and I'm still feeling the effects of that. But they're 9 out of the division. They're only a couple games out of the wild card, so I don't think they're going to be sellers. Not that they even have much to trade. But this team is deeply flawed. There's just something missing. Like they have had so many of these games where they have big leads in the 8th or 9th inning and have come up empty-handed. If they just win those games, they'd be right in the mix with the Rays and the Red Sox for the division. But, woulda, coulda, shoulda, it doesn't seem to matter. This team right now, 51-47, 9 out, just a couple days removed here from the trade deadline. Clearly they're not going to sell because they don't have a whole lot to sell. I don't know how active they're going to be as far as being buyers are concerned. They're probably trying to sell the fan base on, we're going to get Judge back. We're going to get, Severino back, and Kluber back, and Voigt back, and we're going to get our players back, and we'll be ready to go. But ultimately, this team is deeply flawed, and if they miss the playoffs, I expect changes to happen. The good news for the Yankees is, they're only 3.5 out of the second wild card spot. So while the division's lost, you're still going to try and get into the playoffs as a wild card team. I hope you can have Garrett Cole pitch that one-game playoff and give you a chance to advance. So it's been an ugly season. The Yankees came into the year with the highest projected win total in the American League, and here they are in late July, just a measly 4 games over 500. It has been just a disastrous season so far for the Yankees.
Trade deadline this week. Of course, we get the NBA draft, training camp starting, fall camps for football. Great time of the year. Jake, always appreciate you spending some time with us, man. We appreciate it. Look forward to chatting soon.
JT, thanks as always, my man.